Morning. So whether we are revolutionizing human mobility or not, I'm certainly going to be sharing with you an unusual and hopefully interesting story of taking a seemingly pretty difficult idea and taking it all the way through to something that turned out to work pretty well, largely by relentlessly learning from safe failure. So I've always been inspired by flight. When I was a kid, I used to spend a lot of time with my late father doing this kind of thing. I think it's something, flight generally, that inspires people, and has done for millennia. I had this unusual idea. I used to be an oil trader in the City of London for BP for 16 years, and the British forces as well, alongside that in a reserve role. And I was inspired by the idea of tackling flight by leveraging this. So not this chap, I used to train with him, I can't do any of that anymore. But I always think that's a really good example of just how amazing the human body can be when you train it for a specific task. Think how many roles human beings do. I mean, that just shouldn't work. You're supporting your entire body weight on your shoulders in a horrendous planche position. If you could do that, then why couldn't you replace the platform in that case with a form of propulsion? And again, for no practical reason whatsoever, just for the fun of the challenge, have a go at seeing if you could fly in this way. So the ground zero moment was this in a British country lane in 2016, just trying to dismiss most of the sensible reasons why you shouldn't do that, which is holding a micro gas turbine on one arm. That's about 170 horsepower in theory, and pushing with about 20. I've just come from Miami, so we don't have to do pounds anymore. That's about 22 kilos of thrust, and the whole thing only weighs 1 kilo. So it was a pretty phenomenal kind of starting point. Going from there, you can then upgrade your mop bucket, which actually had the fuel tank in it. It didn't just have fuel in the mop bucket. I've now got the fuel tank on my back, and you can see when you try and hold that thrust horizontally, it was pretty hard to manage. So that's 2 engines. Guess where we're going next? So if you can bounce around with 2 engines, you can sure as hell bounce around with 4 engines and start to realize that, I'm still going to come down, but it's getting kind of better. When I mentioned about learning from failure, it was annoying falling over a lot in a farmyard. So we tried with this tether. The tether didn't work because it essentially creates a 5th vector. You're now trying to balance all your arms and legs and an invisible 5th vector that you can't see. But anyway, it made a funny clip. Failing again. This is another fail. So putting enough thrust to actually take off on your arms was just too terrifying. And if you notice the lack of red glow on the outer engines, I was actually chickening out. I wasn't actually gunning them all as much as I could have done. So the model that we ended up with, and this is all evenings and weekends and not telling too many people, because at this stage you don't want to tell too many people about this. I've got an engine on each leg and 2 on each arm. And actually, as you can see, look, I'm actually off the ground for a few seconds. It was just very annoying learning not to let your legs bend. You have this human reaction of bending your knees when I think your body wants to find the ground again, and it's not helpful when you've got an engine on the back of your legs. Through lots of learning and lots of falling over, by November that year we did this, which was, I suppose, the kind of pivotal moment. There you go, I'm still fighting my leg, but that is a 6-second actual flight with 6 jet engines attached to you, and it was the moment where I realized, oh my God, it actually works. Over the winter, we then planned the actual hard bit. Most of you are in business or run businesses. Fair enough doing this. You could stick it on YouTube and enjoy a few days of probably people taking the mickey. But actually, the profound effect it seemed to have on people, the half a dozen people who came to see this, we thought, why don't we wrap this up into a brand, launch it. We launched it with Wired and Red Bull in April 2017. And it went kind of crazy. And this is a very short little show reel. You can turn the sound up again a bit, of just some of the things we did, even in the first year of launching this. And if you can turn it up a little bit. Yep. Yay, there we go. I like that bit. It's blatantly stolen soundtrack there. This is an event, albeit unfortunately not flying here. I was flying 36 hours ago in Miami at an event. This is event 101 in 30 separate countries, most of the time involving a flight demonstration by me or one of my now 7 pilots. Because it all packs into 2 check-in suitcases, ludicrously enough. And you turn up, get some diesel from a gas station. Jet fuel's better, but diesel is just as good, a bit more smoky. And then you turn up and do a flight demo. So it's been a rather unusual journey. You can see some of the countries we've been to. We don't have the time to go through the technical kind of difference, but you can see the engines, rather than being on my legs, have now been one large one on my back, but it's fundamentally a 3-legged thrust kind of tripod, and the whole thing is vector thrust controlled, and it taps into the just remarkable human ability to balance. We can train people, as I'll show you in a minute, we can train people often to do this within a day at one of our places. So this is one of the places we used to train people. We don't use 3 lines anymore, we just use 1. But the next clip was a barn where we were training some people. I need to upgrade this clip now, we've got a much nicer rig. This is an Australian guy who came over. You can see him vectoring down, that tether is doing nothing. Look, he flares out slightly, grins like an idiot, there we go. It is just like watching a child learn to ride a bike. There is a moment when the child looks up and smiles and forgets all about dad or mum holding the back of that saddle. Your brain just goes, oh, this is like balancing, but easier. So from a commercial point of view, we accidentally raised $650,000 in a car park with the Drapers before I went on to do TED 2017. Since then, we've just generated our own money from doing events, doing flight training for clients in LA and the UK, and we're expanding that. We sold a couple of suits. We tend to prefer to train people well before we even think about custom building one, just to really manage our kind of, I suppose, their safety and our brand. But also, in parallel to all this, because I was in the Royal Marines Reserve for quite a while, we can't help ourselves but have quite a lot of fun, particularly with the British Navy and the US military as well. This was a bit of fun messing around, but it also demonstrates the kind of ridiculous. I mean, it just looks like we've spent some time trying to fake this, doesn't it? It is so remarkably easy to control this. I'm spending all next week with 2 of my other pilots doing maritime assault training with the Royal Marines off the south coast of the UK. And you'll see the clip, at the back end of this clip, you'll see, despite me telling that patrol boat to try and do its best to kind of lose me, which was a bit daunting. Going past it, it was amazing how quickly it went the other way. But you'll see, it really is not difficult to move a human form in 3-dimensional space. Like, it's trying to turn away from me, but really I just don't even notice it's moving. So you can land on the bridge, and then without even taking the railings down or even moving that buoy, you can just land straight back on the ship. It's great fun, if nothing else. From a STEM point of view, we try and, certainly whenever we do an event, we try and see if there's a school nearby, we can kind of bring some of this to life. And it's a good excuse to kind of show this, if you turn this up a little bit. The first question you get at a STEM event is, oh, have you thought about building an Ironman suit? So I tend to just show this. So Adam Savage, the guy from Mythbusters, he's a good friend. He became my accidental ground support at TED 2017. He ran this for one of his new TV shows. That's an entirely titanium 3D printed Ironman suit using the CAD files from Iron Man 1. There is a glitch there. You can't see anything out of those eyes. And the electronics we had hidden underneath the breastplate looks a bit like a sort of colostomy bag. But apart from all that, it was a fun exercise. Like I say, I'm showing it to you because, yeah, it's the obvious question. But for a kid's audience, and maybe you guys. It was ridiculous. If you look how quickly I'm looking up and down now, that's because I couldn't see anything. I was trying to take a cue off the ground and look at Adam and work out where to go. Anyway, you see it. I'm going to shuffle it forward. That was good fun. There's lots of fun things about this. From a technology point of view, we love 3D printing. We have our own machines, but we also hugely use the EOS machines for both metal and polymer printing. I'm sure you're all experts in this anyway, but my goodness, what an amazing technology to take a CAD form and within a few days produce an aluminium, titanium, steel, or polymer form of what you need. And it's perfect for us because we're not producing 100,000 of anything, but we don't have to change our mind regularly on the design. So it keeps up with our pace of evolution. Again, I could probably do a whole talk on how that works if you're not familiar with it. In terms of R&D, that is not slowing down. We made the decision about a year ago that actually, if we're flying a little bit like an F-35 or a Harrier, and we've got ex-pilots of both of those planes in our team, we are vectoring down, taking off, and then flying around. But those aircraft tend to then point their thrust backwards and then accelerate to become really a normal aircraft with generating lift from wings. So why can't we do the same thing? Because that's going to save fuel, allow us to go a lot faster, and could be quite fun. So we went back to the drawing board, and our drawing board, as you've noticed, is not afraid to get out there and get your hands dirty and learn from failure, as long as that failure is safe. So when you're developing wings, wouldn't it be helpful if you had a wind tunnel? Well, we have lots of universities that give us access to wind tunnels, but it's much more fun to make your own by just turning the rest of the world into a wind tunnel and putting a volunteer on the back of a Dodge Ram truck, which turns out to go really fast backwards. Anyway. There's, again, an entire talk on the whole philosophy of VTOL to aerodynamic transition and back again, but jumping straight to where we've got to with this. This was back end of last year, our second Guinness World Record speed kind of, I suppose, attempt. The first one was a couple of years ago. We set it at 32 miles an hour, literally the very first time I ever flew across water. this using a very simple ram air leg wing and 2 strakes, and you can see 2 of my pilots just kind of escorting me in a kind of fun way. All I'm doing there is just going faster and faster, and gradually the air is lifting my legs flatter and flatter, so the rear engine becomes a propelling force rather than a lifting force, and the result was pretty spectacular. That was quite fun. And then the really fun bit is to transition back out again. So now it's power up, power up, power up, go back into VTOL, try and hold it stable, and then go back into the flight mode you've seen that we can do. And then land on the ship and then go back again. We're only scraping the surface with this. Now, from a commercial point of view, what is the point of this? I'm very flattered about the introduction around, revolutionizing human transport. Maybe the first motor cars were noisy, smelly, and crap, frankly, compared to a horse. And look where that's gone. So I don't deny the possibility, and we even have an electric version, but we need a better energy storage solution than we have at the moment. But the real solution that we're going for is racing. Because actually, when you think about IndyCar, NASCAR, Formula One, you can turn it up a little bit, then those machines are not practical. They are actually there to be entertaining, inspiring, and leave a trail of interesting technology that maybe has actual applications. Go on, you can turn it up a bit. So this is a little bit of a preview of what we're going to be doing in Bermuda in March. On the 21st of March, there's going to be an enormous race going on with about 7 of our pilots in the key prime location in Bermuda, a load of sponsors. We've even got branded sponsored suits. It's going to be a baby step towards what you see in Formula One or IndyCar and NASCAR. So actually, without being a sales pitch, if anybody wants to get involved in that or watch what happens in March and then get involved in the subsequent one, I'd be delighted. Now, in the interest of 11, 12 minutes, I want to reinforce this point about learning from safe failure. That's our ethos, and I would be a fraud to that statement if I didn't show you, actually, all the failures. So, welcome to all the failures. So, nearly all of these are pilot error or, in the very early days, running out of fuel, which was a very silly thing to do. But this is why we don't fly at 1,000 feet, because you don't get too many second goes at that, and parachutes are only really good if you've gone through the nicely named death zone safely. So, compressor stall there, that was an interesting one, certainly interesting for him. And this is why we race over water, because then you can really push it, and the worst that happens is you go floating around in the water. There we go, that was a big one. And you can see a nice demonstration of the life jacket there. That was a distressing one, that was contaminated fuel in the Maldives. They put my fuel supply in an old fabric softener bottle, and I only realized at the end that that's why I got gradual bunging up of the fuel filters, which is disappointing. These 2 are where the pilots actually have banked and not powered up as they've turned. There's a couple more, and then I'll end on something and not destroy your timeline too much. There's one of the race fails. There we go, look at that. Way head first in there. This is what happens if you try and do a superhero launch too early, before the power kicks in. And then the final one, which people seem to most enjoy. Yay. There we go. I don't know why that didn't actually hurt as bad as it looks it does. Anyway, I don't want to leave that as your final thought of what we do. This is, thank you. I was going to show you quickly there a little show reel of Bermuda, but the Bermuda race is going to be an amazing festival of human-machine capability, and it's all this, but I know we're going to run out of time. So I will thank you very much, and you've already applauded me, so no need again. Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh.